Yeah, maybe there was a little bit of fakeness there too, because I could pretend that I'm not a racist because I'm having lunch with Phil.
Yeah, maybe, maybe. But the point is that I allowed it. If I had brought it up every time I had a chance to speak, if I brought up social justice issues that were going on, but I didn't let that in. I didn't let that interfere with my work, with my profession.
No, well, you were focused. You had a direction.
Yeah, no, I was hoodwinked. I was bamboozled. I was blindfolded. I was scared. I don't care what you call it. Um, I drank the Kool-Aid.
Welcome to Peter and Phil's Courageous Conversations, a podcast addressing race relations and social issues in hopes that you'll be inspired to do the same. Now, let's begin our conversation with your hosts, Dr. Peter Weinstein and Dr. Philip Nelson.
We got to start doing the right thing and not worrying about what other people think.
Well, we have to get back to expecting the right thing.
Yeah. We're so worried about the ramifications of things. We put out a very brief anti-Asian racist statement from SCVMA. It wasn't as long as we did on the African American ones from last year, the Black statement, but I wrote it. The board approved it unanimously. We really didn't even debate it, but it wasn't as strongly worded. It was really just, we've got to really treat all people with more respect and equally. It was not as strongly worded as the one you and I wrote, but it was just really to keep this discussion on the forefront of people being treated with respect. And even as I'm hitting the send button, there's a certain level of anxiety that I get about it. I don't
I
mean
know.
I don't mean to bring tears to your eyes, but and then of course we got one really positive response. Very appreciative of the efforts that we're making. And then a mutual friend said, it really didn't have to be so negative. Things aren't quite as bad as you think they are, not least based upon the people who I speak to.
Wow. Wow. And was this mutual friend Asian?
Nope.
Of course not. And of course, he or she are basing it on their closed society. And the people that they speak to are privileged.
Yep.
Even in the Asian community, because otherwise they wouldn't be in their orbit.
Yep. So I wasn't surprised. What I was surprised was he never responded on the other statement that we sent out. It just was surprising, not surprising.
No, it's not.
He's
Yeah.
much more conservative. He's much more fiscally conservative as well. But it's interesting because there's very little that comes up at the SCVMA level or the CVMA level where race is the central point of the conversation.
Well, that's not interesting. I mean, or surprising.
Right. But it just meant we never had discussions to that level.
Right. We avoided. No, yeah. Well, it's not like it never came up. You just avoided it.
Yeah.
I mean, come on. This is what the courageous conversation is about.
Right.
Right. Because I did the same thing until your phone call or until George Floyd died. I wasn't thrilled about talking about race as a major topic in everything that I did. Now a day doesn't go by when I'm not talking about it. But I'm 65, 66 years old now.
Happy birthday.
It won't be for another 2 weeks.
No, you're just after me. Yeah, no, there's a tendency to avoid confrontational issues, except at the legislative level.
So here's what I've learned in my life, and it took me a lifetime to figure it out, and I feel stupid because I figured it out. And I also feel that I may have wasted some parts of my life, but be that as it may, I wanted to be a veterinarian so bad that I only talked about race if people wanted to talk about race. And that's how I became the go-to person if you want to talk about what do Black people think about this issue, Phil. If you didn't ask, I didn't bring it up, especially when I was at Mississippi State. But I do remember that just about every day that I went to lunch, my table was always full because people wanted to talk about something.
Yeah, it's like me wanting to go sit next to the sports team because I wasn't playing in the sports, but I wanted to be part of the in crowd. You were
Right.
the in crowd, and everybody wanted to be with you.
Well, yeah, and it was safe. They could hear my views and then go home and think about it or talk to somebody else and say, what do you think? And then get re-indoctrinated.
Yeah, maybe there was a little bit of fakeness there too, because I could pretend that I'm not a racist because I'm having lunch with Phil.
Yeah, maybe. But the point is that I allowed it. If I had brought it up every time I had a chance to speak, if I brought up social justice issues that were going on, but I didn't let that interfere with my work, with my profession.
No, well, you were focused. You had a direction.
Yeah, no, I was hoodwinked. I was bamboozled. I was blindfolded. I was scared. I don't care what you call it. I drank the Kool-Aid. When I went to AVMA meetings, if somebody happened to bring something up, somebody else would say, we don't talk about politics here. This is veterinary medicine. Oh. And I accepted that. And it wasn't until recently that I realized you can't separate this.
So I got to give credit to the AAVMC for not shying away from the conversation before anybody else got involved with the conversation.
I made some significant contributions through AAVMC in my early days, in my early career. But that's because I was allowed to. And I was allowed to by, I can't think of his name now. He's still alive, although almost ancient, but
almost ancient.
Almost ancient.
When do we cross the line between ancient and almost ancient?
Death. I'm not trying to be funny, but at some point you get so old that you just stop traveling.
It's like Prince Philip, right?
Yep.
Prince Charles, whoever the guy who just died at 99.
Prince Philip.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, it is, and I think AVMA is slowly, like ancient, slowly trying to move forward. But
yeah, and see, I credit the size of the organizations and the memberships of the organization.
And I think with the growth of the different associations, the multicultural, the Black DVM Network, the Latinx groups, all of these put extraordinary pressure on a national association to keep their ranks together, because fragmentation weakens an organization.
Yeah.
So this is a lot of knee-jerk stuff going on.
But the fragmentation was necessary.
Absolutely.
Because without that fragmentation, no power was being exerted.
Yeah, I mean, even the Humane Society VMA and some of these others that get AVMA out of the middle ground and start to have to take positions that are uncomfortable.
Well, what it really does is, if for the first time in my lifetime, organizations are beginning to discuss issues rather than just dismiss them.
Well, that's why I'm glad we did what we've done at SCVMA to discuss the issues.
Yeah.
That we be sensitive to these discussions. When
I sent my statement out to my community, to our CVM community, I didn't get a formal reply from the statement. I realized that one of the reasons nobody replied to me is because they were like, well, fair. He's not just about Black issues. I mean, I wrote it in a way that it was clear. I understand what you're going through, and that it's time for us to stand up and do something about this. It's time for us to be in solidarity against this as well. But it's just like courageous conversations. People feel it, but they don't want to talk about it.
Well, our job is to get people to talk about it.
Yeah.
There is no lack of things. You may be turning 66 and I may be turning 63. But by the time we're 90, we may get this done. Have a good week.
All right. Same to you.
Thank you for joining us for another courageous conversation. Be sure to follow us and check back next week for more.